The office door slammed shut with a deafening thud, echoing in the otherwise silent hallway. Alex stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief, staring at the man who had just fired him without cause. His boss, Charles Bennett, stood across the room, arms crossed, wearing a smug expression. "You're done here, Alex," Charles said, his voice cold and final. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Alex couldn't fathom it. His hands trembled as he tried to comprehend the betrayal. He had given years of loyalty to the company, sacrificed weekends, and yet this was how it ended. No warning, no explanation, just a casual dismissal. Charles looked at him as though he were nothing more than a disposable cog in a machine. "You're not the right fit anymore." Alex's heart raced with frustration. "What do you mean?" he managed to croak, struggling to hold his ground. But Charles didn't even flinch. His face remained emotionless, almost relieved. "It's over. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The words stung, cutting deeper than any blade. With a final glance, Charles turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing there, crushed and abandoned. The door clicked shut behind him, and Alex was left to deal with the overwhelming rush of anger and confusion. A fire began to burn inside him, and as he stood there staring at the spot where his boss had just been, something inside him snapped. This wasn't over. No, Alex was going to make sure of that. After Charles left, Alex stood there, still in shock, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. He had been loyal, worked hard, and sacrificed so much for this company. Yet, it was all tossed aside without a second thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. As his hands clenched into fists, the anger bubbled up within him. He had to know why this happened. Who was Charles really? And why had he targeted Alex? With a renewed sense of purpose, Alex grabbed his coat and stormed out of the office, determined to uncover the truth behind this betrayal. Alex spent the next few days following Charles' every move. He watched from the shadows, searching for any clues that would explain why he was suddenly thrown aside. He discovered that Charles had been meeting with strange individuals, people Alex had never seen before. There was something off about the way they spoke to Charles, as though they were in control, not him. A sense of dread began to creep into Alex's mind. This wasn't just a personal vendetta. There was something bigger at play here. Alex knew he needed to dig deeper. As Alex dug deeper into Charles' dealings, the pieces started to fall into place. He learned that Charles had been involved in shady business practices, manipulating stock prices and exploiting employees for his own gain. But what unsettled Alex the most was discovering that Charles had connections to people in power, people who could make life very difficult for him. Alex was no longer just an employee wronged by his boss. He was a pawn in a much larger game. Alex couldn't back down now. He knew he was in too deep, but the thought of letting Charles get away with everything gnawed at him. He had nothing to lose anymore. If Charles had ruined his life, Alex would ruin his. It wouldn't be an easy fight, but Alex was prepared to go to any lengths to make sure Charles paid for what he had done. This was just the beginning. Alex knew he couldn't take on Charles alone. He needed someone who understood the world of business and could help him navigate the complex web of corruption Charles had built. That's when he thought of Ben, an old college friend who had worked in finance for years. They hadn't spoken much since graduation, but Alex reached out, hoping Ben could help him. Ben's response was cautious but intrigued. "I don't know what you're up to, Alex," Ben said over the phone. "But I'll help. Just don't expect me to go too deep." Ben had always been the practical one, but Alex needed him now more than ever. They arranged to meet at a quiet bar downtown to discuss the next steps. When Ben arrived, Alex didn't waste any time. He laid out everything: Charles' shady deals, the illegal activities, and how he had been fired without reason. Ben listened in silence, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "You're walking into something dangerous, Alex. You need to understand that. This isn't just about revenge, it's about survival now. Charles has people in high places, and if you go after him, you're putting yourself at risk." Alex knew the stakes were high, but there was no turning back. I don't care, Alex replied firmly. I'll take whatever comes, but I'm going to make him pay. Ben sighed, shaking his head, but he agreed to help. All right, let's get to work, he said reluctantly, though a part of him seemed to admire Alex's resolve. In the following days, Alex and Ben worked in tandem, digging into Charles' financial records and connections. The more they uncovered, the darker the picture became. Alex learned that Charles had been laundering money through various shell companies, hiding illicit funds in offshore accounts. As the pieces fell into place, Alex's anger grew. He was no longer fighting for his job. He was fighting for justice, to expose a man who had been exploiting everyone for his own gain. But Ben started to pull away, his discomfort growing with each new discovery. I'm out, Ben finally said one night. This is too much. I've helped you, but you're on your own now. Alex didn't argue. He understood, but he knew there was no going back. With Ben out of the picture, Alex was left to handle things on his own. But he wasn't backing down. He used every resource at his disposal, going deeper into Charles' empire. Late nights became routine as Alex worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Charles' illegal dealings. One evening, while reviewing a batch of documents, Alex discovered something that made his heart race. Charles had been involved in bribing a key figure in the government. This was bigger than he had thought. The people Charles was working with had the power to ruin him if they found out he was digging into their operations. But Alex wasn't afraid. This was his moment of reckoning. He was going to expose everything, no matter the cost. Alex knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. He needed an ally, someone who could help him take Charles down once and for all. That's when he thought of Mia, a former colleague who had always been sharp and resourceful. Alex hadn't spoken to her in years, but he knew she had the skills he needed. After a tense conversation, Mia agreed to meet. She was skeptical at first, but when Alex showed her the evidence he had gathered, her demeanor changed. You're really going after him, aren't you? She asked, her voice calm but filled with a mixture of admiration and fear. I'll help, but be careful, Alex. This could cost you everything. Alex nodded, knowing the risks but unwilling to back down now. With Mia on board, Alex's plan took on a new sense of urgency. She had connections in high places, connections that could help expose Charles' illegal activities. But as the days went by, Alex realized that the deeper he dug, the more dangerous this mission became. Late one night, while reviewing the latest batch of evidence, Mia revealed something that shook Alex to his core. There's someone inside the government, someone very close to Charles, who might know about you, she said, her voice filled with unease. They've been watching your every move, Alex. We need to be more careful. Alex felt his heart race. The stakes had just been raised. This wasn't just about exposing a corrupt businessman anymore. This was about survival. The news sent Alex into a spiral of paranoia. He couldn't trust anyone. The people he thought were allies might be working for Charles, feeding him information. Alex knew the only way forward was to trust his instincts and rely on Maya's skills. They needed to find a way to get the evidence to the authorities without Charles' people getting to them first. After hours of planning, they finally settled on a strategy. Mia would use her connections to set up a meeting with a government insider who was clean. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance to expose Charles once and for all. We do this my way, Alex, Mia said, her voice determined. We don't take any chances. The plan was in motion, and they couldn't afford any slip-ups. Mia set up the meeting, and Alex prepared himself for what could be the most dangerous moment of his life. The night of the meeting arrived, and Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he waited in a dark alley behind a diner. Mia had arranged for him to meet with the government insider, a man named Henry, who was willing to help them. But something didn't feel right. Alex's instincts screamed that they were being watched. Before he could voice his concerns, Mia showed up, her expression grim. We're not alone, Alex, she whispered urgently. They've got eyes on us. Alex felt his stomach drop. He was trapped. But he had come too far to back out now. We meet him anyway, Alex said, his voice firm. We can't back down. As they made their way into the diner, Alex's nerves were on edge. They met Henry, early 40s male, a government insider who had a reputation for being discreet. Henry was nervous but agreed to help them expose Charles. "This is bigger than you think," Henry warned. "Charles has people who will go to any lengths to protect him, and I'm not sure how much longer I can stay in the game, but I'll do what I can." As the conversation continued, Alex began to understand the magnitude of what they were up against. This wasn't just a matter of corporate greed. Charles was involved in something far more dangerous, something that could destroy lives if exposed. As the meeting ended, Alex felt both a sense of hope and dread. They were close, but the danger was now more real than ever. After the meeting, Alex and Mia returned to their hideout, each of them processing the gravity of the situation. "This is our last shot," Mia said, her voice quiet but firm. "If we move forward, there's no turning back." Alex knew she was right. The path they had chosen was filled with danger, and there was no way of knowing how far Charles' reach extended. But Alex was determined. He had nothing left to lose. "We finish this," he said with unwavering resolve. "We expose him, or we die trying." With that, they set their final plan in motion, fully aware of the risks, but knowing they couldn't stop now. The plan was set in motion. Alex and Mia had everything they needed to bring Charles down, but the closer they got to their goal, the more dangerous things became. They had to move quickly, as Charles had started to get suspicious. Alex's nerves were on edge. Every step they took felt like a tightrope walk, and every move they made was calculated. They spent hours poring over evidence, mapping out their strategy, and securing a meeting with a few key players who could help them finalize their expose. As they sat in the dark room, Alex could feel the weight of everything they were about to risk. "We can't afford to fail," he said, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of tension. Mia looked at him, her expression grim. "If we do, it's over for both of us." They managed to secure a meeting with one of Charles' former associates who had grown disillusioned with his methods. The meeting was scheduled for midnight in a quiet park on the edge of town. Alex and Mia arrived early, taking cover behind a nearby bench to observe the surroundings. The streets were eerily empty, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. "This is it, Alex," Mia said, her voice low. "If he doesn't show, we're on our own." Alex nodded, his hand clenched around the file he carried. He could feel the weight of everything they had been working for pressing down on him. This was their chance, and they couldn't afford to miss it. The figure finally appeared, emerging from the shadows. It was a man in his early 40s, wearing a long coat and looking over his shoulder nervously. He approached cautiously, glancing around before walking up to Alex and Mia. "You must be Alex," the man said, his voice low and cautious. "I'm Leo. I've got the information you need, but we need to be quick. Charles's men are always watching." Alex stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "What do you have for us?" Leo handed over a USB drive, his hands shaking. "Everything. All the evidence you need to take him down. But you need to move fast. He knows someone's after him." With that, Leo turned and disappeared into the shadows as quickly as he had come, leaving Alex and Mia alone with the information that could change everything. Alex and Mia rushed back to their hideout, the weight of the USB drive in Alex's pocket like a ticking bomb. They knew they had to act quickly, but as they entered their apartment, Mia froze, her eyes wide with shock. "We're not alone," she whispered urgently. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face the door, where two men stood, their faces hidden in the shadows. "I knew you were coming," one of them said, his voice cold and confident. "Charles isn't stupid." Before Alex could react, one of the men lunged forward, but Mia was faster. She ducked and kicked out, knocking him off balance. The other man drew a gun, but Alex grabbed a chair and threw it, knocking the gun from his hand. The fight was chaotic, but Mia and Alex fought with everything they had. In the end, they managed to subdue the men and tie them up. "That was too close," Mia said, panting, her hands still shaking. "We need to move faster." After securing the men and getting the necessary information, Alex and Mia decided it was time to move forward. They couldn't stay in one place for too long. The risks were too high now. As they packed up their things, Alex took a moment to look at the USB drive. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. "We take this to the authorities tomorrow," Alex said, his voice firm. "It's over for Charles." But Mia shook her head. "Not yet. We need to be sure, Alex. If we go in now, he'll have nothing left to lose. He'll fight back, and we need to be ready for that." Alex hesitated, but he knew Mia was right. They had to play their cards carefully. "All right," he said. "We'll wait until we have everything in place, but after that, we're done." They knew their next move would be the most dangerous yet. The next morning, Alex and Mia moved cautiously. Their plan was in motion, and they had no time to waste. They arrived at a secluded location where they could safely upload the evidence from the USB drive to a secure server without being traced. Alex's heart raced as he looked at the encrypted files. This could change everything. As Mia worked on the computer, Alex kept watch, his mind racing with what they were about to unleash. The information on the USB could take down Charles and his entire empire. But the closer they got to exposing him, the more dangerous things became. Alex kept thinking about the men who had attacked them the night before. They were only the beginning. "Once we upload this," Alex said, his voice steady but full of tension, "there's no going back." The files were uploading, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. But just as Alex began to relax, the door swung open with a force that made him jump. A group of men stormed in, led by one Alex recognized. It was Charles' enforcer, Damon, mid-30s male, a menacing figure with a cold, calculating demeanor. "I knew you'd try something like this," Damon said with a wicked grin, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Alex. "You should have stayed out of this." Before Alex could react, the enforcers lunged forward, but Mia was faster. She ducked and kicked one of them square in the chest, sending him crashing to the floor. But Damon wasn't so easily deterred. He lunged at Alex, knocking him to the ground. A brutal fight broke out, with Alex and Mia fighting for their lives. They were outnumbered, but Alex's determination kept him going. He couldn't let Charles win. The fight raged on, but Alex and Mia's determination gave them the edge. With a final desperate move, Mia used her agility to trip Damon, sending him crashing to the floor. Alex quickly grabbed a nearby metal chair and swung it, knocking out one of the remaining enforcers. The room fell silent, save for their heavy breathing. They had done it. They had taken down Charles' men. But as they caught their breath, Alex realized something. The files were still uploading. "We need to get out of here," Mia said urgently. Alex nodded, his mind racing. They couldn't risk being caught now. The files were almost done, and this was their only chance. Alex and Mia quickly gathered their things, preparing to leave before Charles' men could regroup. As they moved toward the door, a sharp noise echoed from the hallway. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Alex felt his pulse quicken, but he didn't hesitate. They needed to move, and fast. "Out the back," Mia whispered, pointing to a narrow hallway leading to an emergency exit. They ran down the corridor, the sound of pounding footsteps growing louder behind them. They reached the door just as a group of armed men turned the corner. Mia pushed Alex through the door, and they stumbled out into the night. The air was cold, and their breaths came in heavy gasps as they sprinted down the alley, hearts pounding. They were no longer just fighting for justice. They were fighting for their lives. They reached a safe house on the outskirts of the city, their hearts still racing from the narrow escape. Inside, Mia locked the door behind them and collapsed onto the couch. Alex stood by the window, his eyes scanning the street below, still on edge. "We did it," Mia said, her voice shaky. "The files are out. Charles can't escape this." Alex nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Charles would come after them. He would stop at nothing to protect himself. "It's just the beginning," Alex muttered under his breath. "We've made him vulnerable, but we still need to take him down." Mia stood and walked over to him, her expression firm. "We will. Together." The days following their escape were tense. Alex and Mia knew Charles would retaliate, but they couldn't afford to sit idle. They spent their time planning their next move, analyzing the data they had exposed. Every move felt like a step closer to the final confrontation. "We're almost there," Alex said, his voice steady but full of anticipation. "But we need to be ready for anything." Mia nodded, her expression serious. "It's only a matter of time before Charles goes all in." As they continued their investigation, they uncovered something that made their hearts race. Charles had been making deals with international criminal organizations. The extent of his corruption was far worse than they had ever imagined. Mia looked up from her laptop, her face pale. "If we expose this, Charles will go to any lengths to silence us." Alex met her gaze, his resolve hardening. "Then we take him down before he has the chance." They knew the only way to end this was to confront Charles directly. Alex and Mia set their sights on a final risky move, breaking into one of Charles' properties to gather the last pieces of evidence. As they prepared, Alex's heart pounded. This was their last chance. "We have to do this now," Alex said, the weight of their plan hanging heavy in the air. Mia's face was set, her eyes sharp. No turning back. They arrived at the property under the cover of night. Every step was calculated. As they slipped through the shadows, Alex's thoughts raced. They had made it this far, but now it was all or nothing. "This ends tonight," Alex muttered. Mia didn't answer, but the determination in her eyes said everything. They reached the office, only to find more surprises waiting for them. Inside the building, they faced their biggest challenge yet. As they uncovered the final pieces of evidence, an alarm went off. Alex and Mia barely had time to react. "Go, go, go!" Mia shouted as they sprinted down the hallway. They barely escaped, but the rush of adrenaline kept them going. They had everything they needed. Now it was time to end Charles' reign. The final confrontation loomed ahead. With the evidence secured, Alex and Mia knew they had to act fast. As they prepared to expose Charles, Alex felt the weight of everything they had been through. This was it, the moment of reckoning. "Once we show this to the authorities, it's over for him," Alex said, his voice unwavering. Mia nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. "Let's finish this." They made their way to the authorities, knowing Charles' people would be closing in on them. As they handed over the evidence, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. But as the officers left to act on the intel, Mia turned to Alex. "This isn't over yet," she warned. "Charles has his backers. We still have to watch our backs." Alex knew she was right, but for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that justice was finally within reach. The news broke the following day. Charles Bennett was under investigation, and the evidence was irrefutable. As Alex watched the headlines flash across the screen, he felt a sense of accomplishment, but it was tempered by the realization that the battle wasn't entirely won. "He won't go down without a fight," Mia said, breaking the silence. "But at least now, everyone knows the truth." Charles' empire was crumbling, and his network of criminal allies began to unravel. But as the investigation continued, Alex and Mia knew they were still in danger. The authorities had promised protection, but they couldn't afford to trust anyone completely. "Stay vigilant," Alex reminded Mia. "It's not over until Charles is behind bars for good." The final chapter had come. Charles was arrested, his empire in ruins. Alex and Mia stood outside the courthouse, watching the police take Charles away in handcuffs. For the first time, Alex felt at peace. He had gotten the justice he deserved, and the weight that had haunted him for so long was finally lifted. "It's over," Alex said quietly, his voice filled with relief. Mia looked at him, a small, satisfied smile on her face. "Yeah, it is,"